Well, we are following breaking news this hour. The Queen's family has gathered by her side at Balmoral after being advised that doctors are concerned for her health. Now, in a statement, the palace says the Queen is under medical supervision.
And the announcement comes a day after the 96-year-old monarch canceled a meeting of her Privy Council and was told to rest. Keep it here on CP24 as we continue to follow this developing story. And
there are developments coming out almost by the minute at this point right now. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss, just recently installed by the Queen this week, has gone to Twitter saying the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. My thoughts and the thoughts of people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time.
And CTV News royal commentator Richard Berthelsen joins us live now with more on this. Richard, thank you for joining us this morning. We've seen the Queen taking more time off of official duties for health reasons. Does this situation seem different to you?
Yes, it does. The palace has been at pains to downplay the Queen's health issues until this statement now. The fact that we have a coordinated statement from number 10 Downing Street also suggests that things have taken a serious turn. There's also reports that members of the family are gathering in Balmoral. So the palace is, I think, suggesting to us that the health situation has changed from what we were given to understand just a very few short days ago.
And Richard, just in those few short days ago, the Queen met with Boris Johnson and he's offered his official resignation. And then Liz Truss showed up at Balmoral Castle a short time after Boris Johnson left, as the Queen then, met with her most recent Prime Minister. Of course, she's seen, I think, 15 or 16 under her reign here. But like you said, so she's had those visitors this week. And now we're hearing these reports. Prince Charles, Camilla, I also saw something that perhaps even Prince William is heading there as well. I mean, this really is a sign of how serious not only the palace is taking it, but her immediate family as well, isn't it?
That's right. These signals are all the kind of signals that we had thought we would see prior to a very serious announcement coming from the palace. And I suspect that there's something that's happened. The Queen seemed to be in fairly good humor. Obviously, she is committed to doing her duty, as we know, right to the very end. But the fact that she did also cancel yesterday a meeting with the Privy Council, which was important in order to facilitate the transition, I think suggests that there's something that's happened following that day at Balmoral. We were told she had a fairly good summer. She was seen out doing things on the estate. She had lots of family visiting throughout the summer, but something has changed now, and I suspect that the palace is preparing the public for perhaps even more grave news.
And Richard, I mean, let's be quite frank here. The Queen is 96 years old. We know she lost her husband, Prince Philip, last year. And she has had her own, series of health issues in the last couple of years, as we, talked about in the introduction, kind of backing away, sharing more of the sort of royal duties as it was, with Prince William, with Kate, that sort of thing. And Prince Charles, of course, as well. There's that sort of, evolution and sort of transformation it appears the royal family is going under here. But what do you note then versus now in terms of what we heard about the Queen and her health and stepping back and the tone Buckingham Palace is trying to strike as compared to what we're hearing this morning about these, as you mentioned, kind of coordinated statements?
Yeah, well, we had always, been told that the Queen's issues were related to mobility, to back issues, to being able to stand, to being able to walk. We've seen her starting to use a stick in the last year and a half or so. We've sort of been given to understand that. We were always given to understand that she was in good form and, she was alert and with it. And certainly this photograph suggests that she was, appointing a new prime minister just the other day. But this announcement is not the kind of announcement the palace would take lightly. So I think we have to read between the lines a little bit. And it is similar to kind of announcements that we've had over the past century when things were moving in a direction that could only have one conclusion. Now, I mean, the Queen has been a very strong person, has actually enjoyed really, really good health. And we understood it was just mobility issues. But this today suggests something's different. Something has changed. And I think we suspect that is the case.
Okay, and Richard, we know that the Queen has probably seen more than many people have witnessed the events of the world, 7 decades on the throne. We know that she was passing off more duties to Prince Charles. Is there, in the case that there is something grave that happens here, is there kind of a protocol, a plan that that's in place for who takes over next or who steps up?
Well, obviously, Prince Charles is her heir, and he will become king the moment the Queen is no longer with us. At the very moment, there's no question about that. That is the law, that's the Constitution, that's how things work. There are detailed plans for every eventuality, including the Queen passing away at Balmoral or Buckingham Palace or anywhere else. So there are very, very detailed plans. Those have been drafted out with greater degree of attention to detail as time has gone on, and those plans would be put into place the moment that announcement is made.
And Richard, Jen just alluded to it. 7 decades plus on the throne. The reign has been long, has been quite remarkable when you consider exactly what the Queen has seen here. We've had you on before, Richard, when we've seen polling in the UK or even amongst the Commonwealth about what the Queen means to the monarchy, to the royal family, and what a linchpin she is to so much of this, and how things, it would appear, would be changed when we get beyond the Queen.
Yeah, we've seen that polling. I mean, it's hypothetical, right? And once something actually happens and people start acting in a different way and are in a different chair, wearing a different hat, sometimes a public opinion changes. And, I think there's no doubt that Prince Charles is always going to face an uphill battle. I mean, his mother has the longest reigning sovereign in world history, longest reigning female in world history, and certainly longest in our system. Most people, most Canadians, most Brits, most people in the Commonwealth don't know anyone else. They've always seen the job as interpreted by Elizabeth II. So there's going to be a real change in how that's seen, and it's going to depend on how he conducts himself and how public opinion changes. And as we know, a period of a funeral, a period of mourning can really, really change quite a lot. We saw that with the death of Diana. We've seen that with the other deaths, Prince Philip as well. So, I think things will really start to move and change should that happen.
And Richard, can you talk about what you think the sentiment in London is right now? The people who are learning of this news, do you think people are flocking to the streets? What do you think the reaction is there in light of this news right now?
Well, difficult for me to say, sitting here in Toronto, but I mean, I do think that, people will be quite surprised by this news. This is coming out around tea time in the United Kingdom. And so people will be, at work, doing different things. They'll probably become more aware of it as they get home and listen to news later in the day. And I think people will, recognize the unmistaken writing between the lines.
Yeah, like you're really sort of talking about exactly the significance of this, Richard. Richard, we want to have you hang on for a moment, if you don't mind. We've got one of our CTV national news correspondents, Daniel Hamamdjian, is going to join us live from London right now. But please just hold on the line for a second, Richard, because of course Richard just alluded to the fact he is here in Toronto. But of course, CTV UK correspondent Daniel Hamamdjian live now in London. Daniel, we've seen what's developed here. The comment from Buckingham Palace, comments from Liz Truss here. What more have you heard in the last little while from any officials in the UK about the state of the Queen?
I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury has also put out a statement wishing her nothing but the best and hoping for a speedy recovery. The Speaker of the House of Commons as well. There was a frenetic scene in the House as soon as Buckingham Palace released that statement. And it was unclear what exactly was going on, but the leaders were called by the House Speaker to brief them on what had been revealed by Buckingham Palace. And Richard probably alluded to this, but when it comes to the health of members of the royal family, Buckingham Palace does not volunteer information unless it absolutely has to, certainly in the case of Her Majesty. So for this statement to be put out is quite significant for the fact that Prince Charles, Camilla, and Prince William are also on their way to Balmoral, where she is still on her summer holiday. That is also significant. This will all combine, escalate fears that indeed the end could be near for the 96-year-old monarch.
And Danielle, I asked this of Richard, but of course he's in Toronto. You are there in London. What do you expect the mood, the sentiment to be in London today in light of this news?
I mean, having covered almost every engagement that she's now canceled and hearing the reaction, I think the reaction from people in the media certainly is different from the people who are not in the media. I think, we make a big deal out of this because the Queen has simply always been around. I've said this several times, it's sort of, she's never called in sick to work until the past year or so. So we've just always been used to her showing up. For people who are just seeing a woman that they see as their grandmother, I think the general sentiment is let the woman rest. But in fact, it is her who is very demanding of herself. She reads her briefs every day. She wants to work. She's listening to the advice of her doctors, of course. But at the end of the day, it is her decision to make to cancel engagements. It was probably her call not to come to Buckingham Palace for the handover of prime ministers. And it was Boris Johnson and Liz Truss who had to make an 800-kilometer detour north to Balmoral on what would have been just a few minutes down the road to Buckingham Palace. So it would probably have been her call, but there is only so much she can do. She's 96. She is a human being. She is not superhuman. And we can only expect so much.
And like you said, Danielle, her schedule has been, so packed for so long. I mean, she's everywhere in the UK. She's on the money. I mean, you can't go anywhere in the UK and not see or feel sort of the impact, as it were, of Her Majesty, just in that country alone. And, of course, she's the Queen of Canada as well. But in the UK, it's just so much more prevalent, isn't it?
Well, she's been in the background of, I'm going to put a random number, but 90% of people's lives. I mean, unless you're of a certain age, you do not remember a time without Queen Elizabeth. And so when you're so used to something being around, you just can't imagine it not there. But certainly in the past year, the transition has been smooth. Many engagements were done by Prince Charles and Prince William. I'm thinking of the opening of Parliament back in May. That was really a very significant day, and something for the Queen to miss was very telling. But then again, she would have had to walk down, climb stairs, and she cannot stand for as long as she used to. She can't do the garden parties anymore and meet hundreds of people and simply stand. No 96-year-old would. We wouldn't expect them of our own grandparents. Why should we expect it of her?
And Danielle, staying with those health issues that you mentioned, just not having the capacity to endure all those long events, being able to stand. We know that she had health issues with her back, perhaps, but leading up to what we know today, this news being released, did she have any underlying health issues that the doctors knew about, that they're alluding to? What specifically do we know about what's happening right now with her and her condition?
Sure. Well, the palace has always maintained these are mobility issues and they will not elaborate, and that's no surprise. But certainly, if you look at the photographs the other day when she shook hands with Liz Truss, people noticed the very dark bruise on her right hand, and that was thought to be sort of a benign condition of old age. Other than that, I can't tell you because nobody really knows. But I suspect it's something that would be quite normal for a person her age. The details surrounding the death of the monarch, these have been planned for years and years and years. But there was a time not long ago where we just didn't talk about it. It wasn't in the news. And I remember not long ago, perhaps 4 or 5 years ago, there was the first piece in the newspaper here in The Guardian about what's going to happen step by step once the Queen dies. And it was sort of met by a collective gasp. But how do you talk about the demise of the monarch? But, you can't deny the inevitable. But again, the fact that Prince Charles and Prince William are now on their way to Balmoral, if they're not already there, is quite telling. But let's hope that this is perhaps just a bump in the road for Her Majesty, and she will recover. But let's wait and see.
Yeah, and like you said, 96-year-old human being, not a superwoman. But Danielle Hamamdran, really appreciate you joining us live from London this morning as we continue to following this breaking news about the Queen's turn in her health. Thanks so much for being here.